Hey, everybody, welcome back to I Know a Guy. I'm Anthony, and this is the podcast where connections thrive. Each episode, we spotlight inspiring entrepreneurs, professionals, and individuals doing amazing things. Together, we'll grow your circle, spark collaborations, and discover new opportunities. Today, we're meeting Bob Slone, a seasoned IT project and program manager with over 25 years of experience helping businesses streamline processes and implement effective technology solutions. With a strong network of trusted peers and expertise across multiple industries, Bob specializes in connecting ideas, teams, and systems to drive efficiency and business success. How are you doing today, Bob?
Doing good. How about you?
Oh, I can't complain. It's been a great day. It's been a great week. I get to meet awesome people like you every day. So, I got nothing to complain about. So,
Excellent. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I enjoyed our conversation that we had the other day. We were introduced by a mutual friend, and
hmm
you're doing awesome things. And there's people out there that would definitely benefit from knowing you. So I was excited to have you on. But starting off, where are you located? Where are you calling in from?
Actually, I live out in Hurricane, Utah, which is southwest Utah. It's the golf mecca of western U.S. and beautiful weather 365 days a year, pretty much. So, it's a great place to live, great place to work out of, access to pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, no. Here in Iowa, it's not 365 of beautiful weather. We get 3, 6, or 5, right? You pick.
Yeah.
So
Originally
awesome.
from Nebraska, so I understand that.
You get it exactly. Then how long have you been out there?
Been out here 8 years now.
8 years. Awesome. So you have your haunts. If you have
Yeah.
some friends coming into town that have never visited before, where are you going? What are you doing? And what are you doing for dinner?
Well, we typically they're coming into golf. So we take them golfing, and a lot of the golf courses have great restaurants. So pretty much 90% of our entertainment around here is golf, and then lunch or dinner afterwards. So,
No, that's awesome. And it's all in one location. You don't have to do a lot of driving. You can kind of just enjoy
right.
yourselves and have a
Yeah.
have a nice day. That's awesome. Yeah, not the best golfer. Last time I went, I almost killed the director of our Chamber of Commerce. Right,
Ah.
she was up at the women's tees.
hmm
Never again. You stand behind me until I'm done. Right. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
so awesome. No, that sounds like a lot of fun. But what can you tell us about what you do?
So what I do in my current iteration is working with people like our mutual friend. A lot of people are trying to reinvent their businesses or jump into a new business, kind of mid career, late career, that kind of thing. And then there's still a lot of people that I stay in touch with who are younger and they are building new businesses. And so uh, my participation in that is really kind of giving them the use of my experience. So here's things that I think you should try, things I think you should think about as you change or as you build, that kind of thing. So, and then trying to hook them up with people that I know that can apply themselves to certain issues that these people have. So these are people I trust, people I've worked with before, people who are willing to jump into projects and help somebody else and help them, you know, get accelerated into whatever new phase they're going into.
That's awesome. How'd you get into this? Because years and years of IT experience, and now you're doing something that's not really that. How'd that
Yeah,
work out?
exactly. So when I used to live out in Seattle in the early days of tech, um, Seattle grew from kind of a non-tech city to high tech in a really short period of time, and I happened to get in on that. And so I knew everybody. I knew who was doing what. I knew where people were moving to. I knew who was good at what and where to find them. And I became kind of a resource for a while out there where the phone would ring and people would say, "Do you know somebody?" And usually I did, or knew somebody that knew somebody. So it kind of popped into my head that that was not only something useful I could do, but something I enjoyed doing. And I thought that a lot of the people that I knew that were in my network were people that everybody should meet, sometime in their career, and that there were other people out there that I needed to meet. So basically, since the mid 90s, I've pursued that either as a side business or part of the larger projects that I was on, because that's exactly what you do if you go into a huge project. You're going to look for resources, people that can come in and help you pull it together fast, know what they're doing, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Obviously, I see the value in all of that. So, what is it that you love most about what you're doing?
Um, probably the maintenance and of that network. So a lot of these people you don't talk to maybe for years at a time. You don't see them for longer than that sometimes. But the people that I stay in touch with and the resources that I have do stay in touch. Just heard from one of them yesterday. He's just now moving from his CEO position of a multi-billion-dollar company to executive chairman. He'll still be involved with it, but I met him when he was a aspiring entrepreneur and four guys basically working with him. So been able to keep relationships like that going for years and years, and that part of it is probably the most rewarding because the phone always rings. There's always a chance to introduce people to other people, and it's really satisfying because it's not a me thing, it's an us thing.
Yeah, that's amazing. And there is something to be said about, at all stages, you're either meeting somebody when they're up here and you're like, oh, man, that's awesome. I'd love to hear your story and learn about it. And then you also get to meet people when they're just starting and then watching as it progresses and to become that person. There's a lot to love about that. So
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
So when you're looking at, I don't want to phrase it this way, but average client, what are the commonalities or the things that people might be going through that if they're dealing with X, Y, or Z, you're the person they should be talking to?
So I think there's a couple. We'll take a couple examples. In the startup phase, especially if it's a small startup, and I worked with a lot of those. About 8 years ago, I worked for a series of them, and common things happen. One is that it's very few people on the team to start out with, and they all get heads down doing what they're going to do. And most of them were software companies, and so they were coding and they were expanding the code and they were thinking about what else do we do beyond this code and trying to figure out features, functions, that kind of thing. And in the process of that, uh, because they're primarily a bunch of coders and maybe one or two business people, they kind of get lost in that and they keep, as I say, heads down too long because from the day you start a company, you've got to be connecting to other people. You can't wait for a year until your code's done and then start saying, okay, now I need somebody to help me market. I need somebody to help me with finances because that's getting to be a big issue. You can't wait that long. So the things that I kind of bring to the table are uh, keeping them aware of those upcoming pitfalls unless they do something. And so I'm able to go in and say, all right, we're this far along with the code. We're this far out from our beta. And at this point, you should probably be looking at your next round of capital coming in. You should be looking at hiring somebody as operations manager, that kind of thing, and help them, kind of amend their plan as they go. And I think that, the fact that people do get so heads down is probably the biggest pitfall. And you're trying to resolve that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And then I think you're specially equipped for this question. What do power partners look like for you? Like, who are the people you synergize best with? Obviously, you have a wide network. What are the commonalities that you find between all of them?
They are good people. They are the people that can go into any group of people, make friends easily. They're not just like I say, not just a coder. They're not just a project manager. They're a people person who um, uh, kind of gets trust going quickly. There's somebody that you can walk up to, you can shake their hand, look in their eyes, and you go, oh yeah, this is the person I want to be around. And when you can bring those people into a team or into a project, it just really takes a whole lot of the angst, I guess, out of early day project work. And so I enjoy that. Everybody that I recommend to somebody is that kind of person. You know, on a rare occasion, you'll meet somebody who's just terribly talented, but maybe kind of an introvert. You can kind of preface that with your project team. This guy's coming in. This gal's coming in. Um, they just want to code, and you just need to give them good, clear instruction on what you want. But I think probably 95% of the people that I know that I work with and I like to work with are people just great personalities with great skills.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's not industry specific either. You find that everywhere. You know,
Yeah,
you have
yeah,
people that, yep, they might be good in whatever field they're in, but on
yeah,
top of that, and even better than that, is the fact that they people well.
yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly.
um,
So,
so I think you're probably one of the key people to ask about this. But what advice would you give to a new or aspiring entrepreneur?
um, one thing that the first thing is you got to be a communicator, whether you think so or not. So entrepreneurs, especially in the software business, are people who came up with either a great business idea and don't code, or more often they're coders who came up with an idea and coded the first pieces of it. Um, I think the first thing that they have to be, in addition to what they already are, if they're not, is a good communicator, and they have to have this ability to understand that part of what they're doing is always going to be selling. So you're going to be selling your idea to your team. You're going to be selling your idea to investors. You're going to be selling your ideas to people who are critics, and getting over that hump. You're going to be selling the whole process to kind of the business community that's watching you all the time. And so you can't, everybody's a little bit of an introvert, but everybody, I think, needs to have this kind of toolkit where being able to pull an idea together and speak to people clearly, kind of have a clear elevator pitch. And then second thing is you got to have connections. So if you don't have connections, start making them. Go places where you can make them. And then thirdly, I think it's just understanding that what you're doing now isn't what you'll be doing in 2 to 5 years. Things will have changed. You'll modified what you thought in the beginning, and you'll have made those changes. You might not even be working in the same market space you thought you were going to do. Uh, and I was telling our friend that one of the projects I worked on thought that they were going to be building a product for geospatial apps. They ended up working with hospitals because the geospatial component of what they were doing was was going to be more important to huge hospital complexes. Where is this? Where did it go? Where is this cart? Where is this stuff? And they ended up making a better push into that market than just trying to go out and map stuff, out in the community. So you never know.
That's a lot of good advice. You know, just
Yep.
being willing to pivot and not be
Yep.
so gripped onto that one idea that you
Yep.
can't make a change when it's necessary. I imagine, if they would have been rigid and resistant to making any kind of changes, it probably would have failed, right?
Right. No,
Where
exactly.
otherwise now they can be super successful just in a direction they might not have seen, but we're willing to take that step. So that's fantastic advice. One thing that I've noticed, and I've been plagued by this throughout my career, is this shiny object syndrome that can kind of crop up, especially when you are networking. Everybody's doing awesome things.
Mhm.
What sets a good idea apart from like a great reality?
I would say that uh, if you see a shiny object, it's kind of like the old thing that your mom told you when you were a kid. If it sounds too good to be true and it looks too good to be true, it probably is. And that's just something you have to take on into your professional career. When people, when I meet somebody who's just really excited about what they're doing and their pitch is almost like it almost in some ways sounds like an accusation. Understand my pitch. And if you don't understand my pitch, then there's something wrong with you. A lot of entrepreneurs kind of get in that mode because they're proud of what they did and what they're doing, but the ones that seem to work out the most are the people like the guy I mentioned earlier. Have an idea. I can build some construction software, and I think there's a market for it. And 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 I know that if it doesn't work, it's okay. But if it does work, it's going to be a great thing. And they kind of go into their new business that with that in mind. It might fail. 80% of them do. And so if you don't know that, if you're so glued in to your idea and you're sure it's going to go gangbusters, those are the kind of people I tend to say, well, good luck. I think that's a great idea, but I want to work with people who are reasonable, who understand that, and it goes back to the pivot. If you're glued to your idea, you'll never pivot. If you accept the fact going in the door that you might have to pivot, might not be a refined idea yet, then I think you're gonna succeed, and I think you're gonna succeed in not only building your business, but you're going to bring a lot of good people along. You're going to give them a good experience. You're going to give your customers a good experience. You're just set up for success, I think, a little bit better than people are who are a little bit too excited about their initial idea.
Yeah, it's like you get an idea, you start running down that path, and you run to a wall. You have a couple
Mhm.
choices. You can run into the wall again, over
Mhm.
and over,
Yeah,
or you can step off of it and run in a different direction. Right?
yeah, yeah,
Not where you planned. You can still
yep,
get to where you're going. You just got to take a detour, right? So
yeah,
there's
yeah,
all sorts of ways there, and that's fantastic advice that I think people need to understand going in. You're going to fail. Things are
yep,
going to change.
yep,
You're going to have different priorities in 5 years than you do now, especially as the business takes on a life of its own. At first, it's you, it's you and
mhm,
your baby,
yeah,
and then it's going to mature. It's going to grow. You're going to mature. You're going to grow. You're going to end up somewhere different. It's
yep,
really hard to say this is where I'm at, and this is where I'm going, and there's going to be no deviation. Like
exactly,
that would be
exactly.
amazing to see, because it's fake. But anyway,
Yeah,
um, so how can networking and collaboration improve project management outcomes?
I think there again, project managers tend to be some of them there's a lot of power in it. You're managing disparate groups of people. Some are coders, some are testers, some are idea people, some are just oversight manager kind of people. And it's kind of a heady position, and especially when you get into big companies. If I was a PMO of a big company, and there were literally a couple hundred people involved in underneath the PMO umbrella, and you can get kind of taken up with that, and you know you may not produce the results you want. But I think the a good project manager has that same awareness that any good connector has. They look around them at that 200 people, and they start sifting through them, and they say, which of these people is kind of self-guided and reliable, and I can give them an idea and they can take off with it. Which of these people aren't that? They're good at what they do, but they need a little bit of direction. And you start uh, looking at that composition of that group. And if you have an area where you could use some help, then you can show them by actually making a connection in front of them. I've brought people in for like 2 and 3 day kind of bursts of work that leave after 3 days, but they're very good at this one thing that we're stuck on. And you not only fix the problem, but you show these other people that are in on the team how easy it is if you know somebody and if you've kept in touch with somebody, how easy it is to bring that expertise in. And these people are not uh, they're not scary people. They're good people. These are the people you want around them. And if you've got a network like that, you can do that too. And anything I can do to kind of evangelize this process of building your connections, building your kind of network of people, because they'll serve you at some time and you will serve them sometime as well. And I think, that's a point I want to make very clear. My connections can call on me anytime. I will jump on a plane. I will jump in the car anytime. Because that's the trade you make with them. If they're a lifelong friend and a lifelong business connection, you have to do for them as much as they do for you. So I think that's what I would tell a project manager is that it's not just managing the project. It's it's a layer or two of awareness around you, and that the connections you can bring to the table and the experience you can bring to the table through connections.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer that we should probably teach networking a little bit more in school, right?
Yes.
Because it's going to help
Yes.
you no matter what level you're at. If you have a job just regular 9 to 5, it's going to help you. If you're a business owner, it's going to help you. If you're a CEO of a company, it's going to help you. There's no
Yep.
bad reason. There's no reason not to grow a network,
Right.
and it can be intimidating, right? When you're
Sure.
starting off, because you see people like yourself, or you see people that are super great connectors, super great networkers. And you're like, how can I
Mhm.
do this?
Mhm.
What advice would you give to them to start on how to start building, that I guess Rolodex of valuable connections?
Yeah. Um, do exactly that. Uh, LinkedIn, for example, is a good starter point. It's easy to get people to connect with, and anytime you meet somebody, it's an easy tool that you can go find them on usually and connect with them that way. But it's deliberate, and so I don't care if it's a spreadsheet. When I first started, it was a 3x5 card, and a buddy and I sat down and we said, what do we need to know about people to maintain this connection? What should we keep in terms of information? And the 3x5 card wasn't just their name, address, and phone number. It was, where did we work with them first? What jobs were they working on? What skills did they have? And so I started keeping that file of 3x5 cards. Well, then CRM came along, and I started keeping it in a low end CRM package. Today, it's still linked into a large degree for me. The bulk of them are in that, but I also put together kind of a plan of people that I haven't heard from a while. So I want to make sure that I get a hold of them in 2025, for example. And so I have a list of those people. And right now, actually, I'm using, I'm a Gmail user. And so Gmail's got some task list capabilities. And so what I've done is set down, kind of in January and look at who I need to get a hold of, who I need to reconnect with, and I put it into that task list and I kind of burn through that at my own pace. But you have to be committed to some kind of process. There's no one process is better. It's a 3x5 card, it's a spreadsheet, it's whatever you want it to be. But once you make that connection, keep it, be be honest about it, and be, like I said, ready to respond to them as much as you want them to respond to you.
Absolutely. And it stinks, but like everything else of value, it takes work. It
Yeah,
takes effort.
exactly.
It's not a magic pill. It's something that you should
Right.
for sure devote time into, because it's one of the more valuable things that you can be doing at any point
Yep.
in your life.
Right.
But it is work. It takes effort.
Yeah.
So fantastic. um, why you? What sets you apart from everybody else out there doing something maybe similar, or kind of in a similar industry, or trying to help people in their similar way? What really makes you stand out?
Um, Probably that my expectation is that what I give to people isn't to make a ton of money. And I've had some conversations about this recently in this task that I'm working on for helping people pivot their careers. Um, the goal can't be the first goal can't be making money. Um, and so I will talk to people as much as they want to talk for little or no money, to get them going and to get some ideas solidified. And then if they want to retain me after that, fine, we'll talk about a contract. But I think the thing that I've learned over time is there's a lot of conversation that you need to have. You need to kind of qualify. Somebody comes to you and says, "Well, I need this, and we think you can do this." Okay, well, let's talk about it. What is this? Where do you think this is going? And why do you think you need somebody to help you? And how much do you think somebody needs you need how much help do you think you need? And what kind of help do you think you need? And have conversations about that first, rather than just diving in. And you know, somebody called me not long ago and said, we've got a great piece of software we just built. It's not really getting into the market we want. And we think we should do this. And if that doesn't work, we're going to do that. And in that conversation, there was no anything else. It was this or that. That was what they'd already decided. And so I said, well, okay, um, tell me why you think this works. Well, we think if they do this, this will happen. And if that doesn't, then if they do that, another result will happen. So they'd already gone through all their options in their head and decided that if one of these two things didn't happen, they were just going to dump the project, and it wasn't going to move forward. And that kind of thing, probably isn't going to get you anywhere. You have to have a whole lot of conversations. So bottom line, you can call me, you can talk to me. I'll give you some free advice. I'll tell you what I think, what I'm hearing. And it's all based on things that I've done, hundreds of times before. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. And I tell them that this could work. You're right. You have a plan here, but it might not. So if it doesn't, how do you feel about that? Where do you want to go? And if all that conversation kind of pans out, then absolutely, let's engage. Let's put a deal together, and we'll work on that. So
absolutely. No, that's fantastic. And being upfront that it could work, it could work. There's no one universal key to this stuff. There's things that have worked for me, things that have worked for other people that didn't work for me, things that you might have, want to try. So absolutely. I know we could talk about all this stuff, right? We didn't really talk about the IT really at all. We talked about more of the networking side, which, I think is incredibly important to everybody out there that's an entrepreneur, or even not, just people. But in general, is there anything that I missed or that I failed to ask that you wanted to add?
I think the only thing that I missed it, not you, but is that in this deliberate process that you do, it's not necessarily just the people that are in your space, the people that are in your industry. It's always good to know what other people are doing. So, for example, when we bumped up against the hospital piece, that was actually a better market than where we thought we were with the other geospatial piece. I learned a ton in that process myself, and things that were true and false about the things we believed about that deal, that process, played out in other industries as well. And so don't limit yourself to, in your connector effort. Don't just limit yourself to, if you're in construction software, don't just limit it to construction. Meet other people. Always, always, always try to talk to somebody on a plane. If somebody's obviously a business person on a plane, they don't mind talking, I'll talk to them all the time. I met 2 or 3 clients that way. Read, get online, Google stuff, find out what people are doing. If there's, and now with AI, I think that's just a tremendous tool for your connector research. If you've got an idea, you get up in the middle of the night and you say, geez, wonder if this sector would be good for me. You can Google it, you can AI it next morning and get some answers. And so use lots of tools, explore lots of avenues. Don't get stuck in one space.
Yeah, that's super important. A lot of us, we can have a preconceived, idea of what the conversation is going to be like if you are talking to somebody. Some of your best connections can be nowhere adjacent to you in business. Like they could be somewhere off the thing, but they might talk to somebody that, would be a good fit for you. And, they say it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. Being able to have people that like you enough to advocate for you when you're not around in all different areas is nothing but a benefit to you.
Exactly.
And so reciprocate, do the same thing for them, find that group, network, all of the stuff. So fantastic. Well said. So for those that want to know more, that would like to have a conversation with you, what's the best way to do that? How can they find you? Where can they get a hold of you?
Actually, the easiest one is still LinkedIn. I'm open to people, sending me a notification. I get a few every week, and I'll, I look at all of them because it's easy enough to do. And right now, that's probably the best place, and then go from there. And I'm also a person that if the conversation goes well, I can have my phone number, and we'll talk anytime. So.
Perfect.
LinkedIn probably first.
Okay. I'll be sure to put that in the show notes so we don't have to hunt for it. It's just going to be clicking and go. Have that conversation. I can't stress it enough. If you're thinking about getting a hold of Bob, get a hold of Bob, right? He's a wealth of knowledge. he's going to be able to help you in multiple different areas. If nothing else, just somebody that's been there before, I've seen it before, that can say, this worked for me, this didn't work for me, this worked for someone. It's super valuable. There's no reason not to have that conversation. Absolutely do that. If somebody would like to get a hold of me, you can find me at ikag.me. You can find more episodes, subscribe to our newsletter, and connect with our growing community of awesome people like Bob. If you were somebody you know would like to be interviewed, you can also apply on the website. But Bob, thank you so much for coming on, pouring into us. You're doing the things that people should be doing naturally, right? It's organic. I always say that, we kind of got a little bit muddled up with the internet because everybody started doing stuff a little different than we had traditionally. Traditionally, it was all referral based. You had your town square where that was your banker, that was your baker, that was your lawyer, and everybody worked together and advocated. And we're coming back to that, but we're coming back to that virtually, right?
Yep.
So you have
Exactly.
a much wider reach than anybody else in history. So leverage that. Take the things that Bob said, put it into practice, and you'll be amazed what happens. So
Yep.
really appreciate that. Let's all go. Let's have an awesome day and grow our circles. All right.
Yep. Thanks so much.
This is my pleasure.